Good morning, everyone. We have the coveted barrier to lunch spot, so we'll try to get through this in one piece. Good to see you all today. I'm Jonathan Cart. I'm the CEO of the Lipedema Foundation, and I've been with the organization for a little bit over a year. This is my colleague, Jamie Soderberg. She's our office manager. And I had the privilege of speaking to you all briefly at last year's conference. This is Jamie's first time in front of this group. She's a little bit nervous. She's going to share a little bit of her personal story. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking, so maybe we can give her a big round of applause for starting.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we're here to talk to you about most of what we do, as you probably gathered from Guy Eakin, our colleagues' talks earlier today, is that we fund research to define, diagnose, and treat lipedema. We're going to talk to you about something that's in a little bit of a different area of our work today, which is our work to build awareness about lipedema, and a modest proposal that we have for Lipedema Patients' Bill of Rights. I haven't actually looked at the advance yet. No disclosures, and we're not doctors, so please talk to a medical professional about your care. Before diving into the content of this session, just want to put up a slide showing the members of our team. We are all here in person at the conference this weekend, so please come find us if you haven't already. You probably saw we have not just one, but two booths back to back in the middle of the exhibitor hall. We'd love to meet you and hear more about your story and your perspectives on lipedema. Also, we're going to be hiring throughout the year, so please keep an eye on our website and on social media for announcements about job postings.
So, my tribe. Thank you guys for welcoming me back a second time. Super excited to be here. One of the best conferences every year. I want to do a quick show of hands. Who in the audience has felt dismissed or disrespected by a medical provider when seeking a diagnosis or a treatment? How many of us have been told to just eat a little less and exercise a little bit more? How many of you have felt like you've received substandard medical care because of your size or your medical condition? How many of you felt discriminated against in a healthcare setting? And how many of you felt like you knew more about lipedema than your medical providers? Pretty overwhelming response. We're sharing what most of you already know, and it's clear that people with lipedema have a hard time finding competent and compassionate care.
So why a patient's Bill of Rights? Well, it should come as no surprise, given all those hands up in that little poll exercise, that data from the Lipedema Foundation registry shows that the average time to diagnosis is greater than 8 years, right? I mean, this is something that we all know. We've heard it again. Patients are dismissed by healthcare providers. There was that show of hands, but there was also the presentation from Joanna Falk earlier today, which emphasized that this isn't just a US problem. This also happens in places like Sweden, right? I just want to make a point that hospitals, insurance companies, some care settings have a patient's Bill of Rights, and in some cases, they even have to abide by that by law. This is a little bit different. I mentioned in the introduction that this is a proposal at this point, right? We're not a medical provider. We're not a clinic. We can't make anyone abide by this. So we're sort of launching this out into the world as a modest proposal. We want to hear feedback from patients. We want to hear feedback from providers about sort of what makes sense from their perspective as well. So what is it then? Well, it's a list of 10 aspirations for better care for people with lipedema, as well as resources for patients to learn and self-advocate. If you want to check it out, this QR code will take you to a landing page for this document. You'll see the word draft everywhere. It's, as I mentioned, this is kind of a first stab at this, and we really do want your thoughts on it. That link there goes to the same place, and we also have hard copies of it at our booth if you'd like to see a quick summary of it in person in physical form. Won't spend a lot of time on process, but how do we create this? Well, we interviewed lipedema patients, physicians, and therapists about their experience, both seeking on one side and providing diagnosis and effective care on the other. We then drafted things that we called rights, which are what we think expectations that patients are entitled to. We sent it back out for an initial review from a small number of patients and others to understand what resonated, what didn't, made a few early edits, and we soft launched it later last year, but we really do need feedback at this point to make it useful. Caveat, limitations, this is definitely not enough. We're not going to launch this out into the world and suddenly everyone is going to get effective and respectful care that emphasizes and respects their dignity, right? So, let's not be Pollyannish about this. But, systemic problems, there's bias, including weight bias in healthcare, racial and gender bias, and frankly, access to care depends so much on who you are, where you are, and what resources you have, right? Can you pay for things out of pocket? Are you able? Do you have the free time to advocate for yourself? It's not easy. And it's not just one of these things at a time. These things all interact, right? So many folks in the community of folks with lipedema are dealing with multiple of these factors at the same time in their quest to try and get care. That said, we do think that this is something that could be helpful. It's a modest proposal, and Jamie's going to tell you a little bit more about her story and how something like a patient's bill of rights might have helped her.
So, Guy Aiken, I see you out there. I think the first 3 days on the job, I met with Guy, and he said to me, so how do you feel about writing a blog post about your story and your history with lipedema? So like 3 days on the job, I'm like, okay, I'll give it a go. And it's funny, I didn't really stop to think about what my journey had been up until that point. We just go through the motions, we go through the days, and before we know it, 5 years goes by, 10 years goes by. So if you're interested in my full story, you could see it on the Lipedema website blog. But I'd like to share some of the highlights with you. While everybody has a story, based on the show of the hands in the room today, and the countless conversations that I've had with fellow lipedema patients, my story is so similar to many of you in this room today. The initial changes in my body became prominent. I saw my first signs of lipedema at around age 11. I always had larger upper arms and what I remember my parents calling thick thighs. I continued to have issues and especially got exacerbated around the time of the onset of puberty. My parents really struggled with how to deal with this. They knew something was happening, but they weren't quite sure what that something was. They looked for advice from healthcare professionals, but nobody had any real answers to provide for them. So at 11, I suffered the indignities of being weighed in front of total strangers in a public setting, and I vividly recall tracking my weight faithfully in my little handheld notebook week to week at adult weight loss support group meetings. I was put on another diet program in middle school and never at the time even questioned why my friends were in the cafeteria lunch line and I was at the nurse's office taking diet supplements every single day of the week. For me, this started a lifelong roller coaster with dieting, disordered eating, and even a failed bariatric surgery. So, how could my life have been different if a patient's bill of rights had existed? So I'm going to walk through a couple of examples of the rights. I won't run through all of them, but I will share some of those that would have had a major impact on my life in so many ways. The right to a timely diagnosis should be pretty straightforward, right? As we all know, it's not. A timely diagnosis can increase and improve our treatment options. Although I had first signs of lipedema at around age 11, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 42 years old, over 30 years later. I often think, what if my parents had known or heard about this condition, lipedema? What about my doctors, my nutritionists? It could have saved years of struggles and gotten access to appropriate care so much earlier in my life. Fortunately, awareness is increasing, but just not fast enough. And many doctors choose to dismiss us when we show up in their offices to plead our case. Just eat a little less, exercise a little bit more. So we have proposed this as a right, but the reality is many doctors don't know about lipedema. So there's some resources we have heard that have been helpful for our patients in advocating for themselves. And I have to say, we are our own best advocates. I'll highlight just a few of them. One thing we've heard is that research-backed documents, like the LF's What is Lipedema educational brochure, can help start a conversation with our providers. Not all providers are open to it, but for many, it could be the start of a journey of a willingness to learn more about the condition. We have copies at our booth, happy to send you as many as you want. I'm the girl that ships those. We get thousands a week, so keep the orders coming in. It's hard to find a doctor who is knowledgeable about lipedema. We hear that CLTs, or certified lymphedema therapists, are among the most knowledgeable people. They're often familiar with doctors in the area who might know about lipedema. So to find some in your area through the local LANL directory, The link is there and on our website. Reach out to them, talk to them, see if they know any knowledgeable doctors in your area. Okay, here's another. This one is a peeve of mine. My colleagues are probably sick of hearing me talk about it, but disease-specific care at any weight. In my journey through the healthcare system, I can't tell you how many times I've been given a gown that didn't fit, or a blood pressure cuff that was too small and gave an inaccurate reading. And some people with lipedema may need special accommodations for their size, and they shouldn't be afraid to ask for them. However, we shouldn't have to ask for them. This is about basic dignity and respect. It's also about effective medical care. Lipedema patients, as with any patient, should be treated seriously and respectfully, regardless of our size. Here too, we can't wait for the doctors to sign on to this Bill of Rights. So here are some resources for patients to help educate themselves about how to assert some of these rights. Just want to give a shout out to a couple of the presentations that Dr. Jerry Bartholomew of the Cleveland Clinic has given at previous FDRS conferences. You can find the links up on the website. And these are about finding sympathetic providers, coaching people with lipedema to have the best chance at a productive conversation in the clinic. There's also a Lipedema Foundation resource about the differences between lipedema and obesity, as well as some helpful graphics. So very quickly, patients should have a right to realistic treatment options and expectations. As I mentioned in my care journey, I encountered a bariatric surgeon who knew nothing about lipedema, never even considered it. I had a major life-altering surgery and was told as long as I followed the rules, I could not and I would not fail. Yet, here I am, another failed attempt that did nothing to help my lipedema. And while it was not as drastic as surgery, plenty of medical professionals have continually still tried to push diet pills on me. The Treatment Act, the Patient's Bill of Rights, all these things are about knowledgeable care, but they're also about providers acting honestly, compassionately, and being transparent about potential outcomes, both good and bad. To help assert this right, it's important for patients to be knowledgeable about their treatment options. We have a treatment options page on our website, and the FDRS has a wonderful self-care playlist. And note also the link on the page to check out a physician's reputation and investigate your proposed treatment plans.
Thanks, Jamie. Just a couple minutes left. I saw some vigorous head nodding while Jamie was talking, and also some folks taking photos. There are a bunch of links in here. You don't have to write all those links down. We have all of our presentations up on our website at lipedema.org/FDRS, so you can get the links to these things there. But just quickly, some of the things we've heard so far, we've definitely heard folks writing in over email just in the hallways saying that this is a great resource and that some of the resources that are linked there can really be helpful for folks looking to educate themselves about some of these topics. We've also heard some constructive feedback and criticism of it. Some ideas for how to refine it already, which, just a couple of these up here now. An important one, lipedema patients are already working full-time to manage their care and their treatment. And is it really fair to ask them to go deeper to educate themselves on these topics? And we hear that. And that, one thing that we've heard a couple times is this notion of acknowledging the barriers to care around race, gender, size, et cetera. And that's something that we've, as you've seen, already kind of incorporated to this in a fuller extent than we had initially. So really are responsive and appreciate the feedback. And then just some aspirations for the future, things, wouldn't it be great if things? And I thought these were great. Obviously a caseworker assigned to every patient who needs complex care. What a dream, right? We're so far away from that now that it's hard to see from here to there. But, this is obviously a patient population that could benefit from something like individualized care. We can dream. And then, what about adopting this by the WHO and approving it for all countries as a platform for worldwide acceptance of lipedema? If anyone has a connection to the head of the WHO, please see me after this conversation. So some next steps. We really want to hear feedback, especially folks in the community of people with lipedema. What resonates, what doesn't, what's missing, what should we think about? We want to take that stuff and make this better for the future, something that really resonates with folks. We listed resources up here that we think can help for folks to educate themselves and better prepare them to try and assert some of these rights, to achieve some of these aspirations. But we want to hear what's been helpful for you in your conversations with medical professionals. What's missing? And if you don't see something there, then what could we create to do it? And though it's still a draft, please share this with others who you think might benefit or folks that might have good thoughts about this. And then this isn't a one-sided conversation. We really do want input from providers as well, too, right? Like, how does this land for you? How do you think about this? Recognizing that you're working hard, that there are great doctors out there. Some of them are in this room. You're working under a lot of pressure, too, a lot of constraints. There's a lot of systemic stuff that you're dealing with, too. So we want to hear how do you sort of kind of get some of this message? Just as importantly, how can patients better prepare themselves for their conversations with you in the clinic to ensure a productive dialogue between the two of you? And then really, what's it going to take to convince your colleagues? I mean, seriously, come talk to us. We need advocates, we need folks signed up to help us in this, and we want to know what works, but we also want your help doing it too. So thanks to everyone who participated, especially the people with lipedema. Couldn't have done this without you and want to hear more. Come talk to us. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.